In the middle of President Trump's lawfare days, there was an inner circle who knew exactly behind the story what was going on. Our guest today is here to talk about the story behind the story, the truth that the news is not sharing, and the spiritual side of what has been happening as far as spiritual warfare. Today on Pray with America's Leaders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pray with America's Leaders. We are so grateful that you are with us. And since we've been together last week, we have had a whole lot going on. But as wonderful as Tuesday's webcast was, sharing about the gospel, we are back to news at hand. And we've got some things to share that I think you're going to want to know about. We are going to be talking today about the lawfare against President Trump between his terms and how your prayer can make a difference on all those things. And from behind the scenes, what was happening and what is the truth about the Mar-a-Lago raids and other things that were happening against the president. But before we begin, as always, we ask that we would go ahead and take a moment and give this time to the Lord and seek his will for what we are going to be hearing. Pray for our guest, pray for our technology, and let's go ahead and have our first all pray.
All participants are unmuted. All participants.
Well, I'm Chris Kubal, Chief Program Officer at Intercessors for America, and it is my pleasure to meet somebody that I have been looking forward to actually meeting. I've heard about this wonderful person from multiple friends of mine and seen her on the news, and both as a reporter and also somebody who was a speaking head or a talking head about what was happening with President Trump. And I'm talking about Christina Bobb. So let's go ahead and bring our guest out today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, as I was doing some research on you, Christina, I've known you as behind the camera and also in the inner circle of President Trump's legal issues, but you also are a former Marine. Wow.
I am. That's true.
So, as you have had this wide range of experience, surely, all of these pieces have come together kind of for where you are right now. Tell us a little bit about how all of your life kind of has wound up to this moment and what maybe all those pieces added up to where God has put you on assignment today.
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't foresee it coming. That's for sure. And I would love to say, oh, I followed the Lord's voice on everything. And it was, a very clear, straight path, but that's probably not true. It definitely wasn't a clear, straight path. But I started my legal career in the Marine Corps, and then I worked at a large firm in San Diego. I was doing civil litigation out there. And I mobilized again as a reservist in the Marine Corps. I went to Helmand Province, Afghanistan as on active duty, and then to Stuttgart, Germany as a reservist, where I was basically active there the whole time. I joined President Trump's first administration. I was the executive secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. And I served there from 2018 until 2020, right before the election. And then right before the election, I felt that I just needed to kind of go in a different direction. I loved President Trump. I thought for sure he was going to have a second term right away. And so I thought that I would come back into his administration, but I needed to kind of reorganize, I guess, where I was at. And so I left to be a reporter, and I mean, everything, the rest is history, I suppose. Everything kind of blew up. What a time to be a reporter during the 2020 election. And then it was through my reporting that I developed a relationship with the president. And then he invited me to join his legal team, which I did. 2 months after joining his legal team, I was asked to participate basically in the Mar-a-Lago case. I was asked to be the custodian of records for Mar-a-Lago. So I was the custodian of records for all the documents at Mar-a-Lago, and met with the FBI, the Department of Justice beforehand. And, so it's 2 months in. It was very fast after I started working for him. And then all of the Jack Smith investigations, because of my role working with Rudy Giuliani in post-2020 election. I know Rudy very well. I worked very closely with him. And then, so I got sucked into both Jack Smith investigations. I got hauled before Congress. I want to say 6 or 7 times. I don't even know how many. I was sued by Dominion. Thankfully, that got dropped. I've been indicted in the state of Arizona. I'm still fighting criminal charges. I'm a criminal defendant as we speak. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot to go through, but
like you said, you would have never guessed that all this was coming your way, and you made it onto our radar. Most of us, when you got on the news, and most of us who are watching the conservative news first, came across you as that, and then, surprised to learn you also had, your credentials as a lawyer. Tell us, you've written a book, and obviously you've got a big story to tell, but what was it that made you, because you've written 2 other books?
One. So this is my second book. Yeah.
This is your second. So you've written a book, and what was it that got you feeling like you've got to write this book?
It's just the truth. Americans don't know what actually happened. The story that the media told you about the Mar-a-Lago case is not even close to being accurate. And I have several friends in the media industry because I was a reporter myself, and I, go on television shows, and I've had a handful of my friends who are reporters call me and say, I'm a reporter. I know the news, and I didn't know most of what's in here. And it's mostly just because we weren't allowed to tell the story because there was litigation going on, and there were lawyers involved, and there were potential criminal charges, and there were, investigations and depositions and all of the legal things that come up. And so it's hard to tell the story when you're not really allowed to because of the legal proceedings. And so I wasn't in a place to be able to tell the story until President Trump won the 2024 election. And then I was like, okay, now I can tell the story, and now I know it's safe to put it out. So I put the manuscript together, which was actually pretty easy to do because I had taken very copious notes of everything that went on. I've got text messages and emails, and I have everything very tightly documented because I was sharing it with my attorneys at the time. And so it actually wasn't that hard to compile it together, but I had to wait to be allowed to tell the story. And then of course, the story keeps going, and it's still going. It's not even over yet. So
yeah, right.
So once I knew I was allowed to tell the story, then I had to meet with President Trump to make sure that I had his permission, because all of the information I have is attorney-client privilege, because I was a staff attorney for him at the time all this went down. And so I needed his permission. So I met with him. He was wonderful. He actually did the foreword for the book. So you get a note from the president there.
Isn't that a first to have a foreword written by a sitting president?
I think so. I mean, I know he did one for Eric's book that's coming out here shortly, but I'm not aware of that happening before. So it's very humbling and exciting for me to know that he's blessed the book, put his stamp of approval on it. And this is the real story. This is what actually happened.
Well, I want to ask you, but I also don't want you to give away things that people are going to want to buy the book to find out. But I'm sure there's some things that you can share. Yeah. What are some of the things that you think people would be most surprised to learn when they read your book about the real truth? And, there's multiple things that you talk about. So I don't know if you just want to pick one or pick a couple.
There's a lot, but I would say they had no probable cause to raid Mar-a-Lago. They had no probable cause to open the grand jury investigation in the first place. They had to lie to the court to do it. They had to go to a conflicted judge to do it. The judge that ultimately granted the search warrant was the one who had recused himself 6 weeks prior from the Trump-Clinton case, saying he was incapable of being impartial. And so the book takes you through all of that, but it's got all the dialogue and text messages. So it goes into a lot of the detail. But at the end of the day, you look at everything that happened and you go, there's no way that this was lawful. There's no way that this was legal. And the media kind of paints over that and says, oh, well, they had a warrant. They wouldn't have gotten a warrant if it wasn't appropriate. And they completely glossed over the fact that the Biden administration, talk about weaponizing the justice system. They did it to the nth degree. And it's pretty shocking. People, you kind of know that. I assume that the readers would probably think that's the case, but then actually getting the details, you're like, holy cow, there's no way that this is what happened. But
I think to the average person who's not a legal person, we don't know the ins and outs of some of that, the way things happen. We know, and this sounds terrible, kind of how we watch it on TV, on Law and Order, and some of those things. And that's our frame of reference, or just the most basics of how the legal system works. But as a lawyer, you're seeing infraction upon infraction and process not being followed and all that. People, who are not in that may not catch all of those things. And so therefore the average person, and let's say there's a lot of people out there that take things at face value. Hopefully none of our folks watching, and a lot of people on the right are not necessarily, but there's a lot of people who just assume that because that's how it happened, it must have been lawful. And that must have been really frustrating, knowing the truth, but not being able to say anything about it.
Yeah. And they hope, it was 3 years later that I was allowed to tell the story, and they hope everybody forgets or moves on and says, oh, no big deal. Donald Trump's weaponizing the justice system, when the truth is that it was Jack Smith and his whole team and the Biden administration and whoever the heck was involved in all of that. They absolutely flipped justice on its head. They had no reason to raid Mar-a-Lago, but it was very clear that they were trying to frame the president for some type of like Hillary Clinton email scandal type situation. And one of the things that I don't think that was reported well at the time that was driving me nuts, like, why isn't anybody talking about this? The grand jury that opened the investigation and where they got the grand jury subpoena from was all here in Washington, D.C. Everything was done in Washington, D.C. And that's incredibly significant because the case was ultimately brought in Florida. And the reason they had to bring the case in Florida was because they did not have enough probable cause to get an indictment in D.C. That's how little it was. They couldn't even get an indictment from a D.C. liberal D.C. grand jury. There was no crime. There was absolutely no crime. And so they had to shift to Florida and bring this, fake obstruction of justice case that everybody knew was going to go away. It was never a legitimate case. But they had to bring it basically to, CYA because they had already raided Mar-a-Lago, and they had the whole world staring at them going, why did you raid Mar-a-Lago? And so they had to have something to show for it. And they couldn't get anything out of DC. So they had to bring the case in Florida.
Well, and after the fact, the optics are what also I'm sure they were interested in for the public is, seeing his place be raided. Some people never even look into why, or was it lawful, or, what kind of a little retraction on page whatever is, a story to a lot of people. Seeing it happen was all they needed to cement what they may have already thought about the president if they were on the left.
Well, I actually think, and I go into great detail on this in the book, but I actually think that they were trying to keep it a secret. I don't think they wanted anybody to know about the raid because they didn't have probable cause. And that's a huge difference between what happened in Mar-a-Lago and what happened with John Bolton. With John Bolton, Kash Patel came out right away and said, no one is above the law. We're raiding John Bolton. The FBI put out a statement saying they had a warrant. We're going in. That didn't happen in Mar-a-Lago. And I don't think most people realize this. And I love that you bring this up. I've done several interviews on this, and everybody usually kind of goes that route. And I go, oh, wait, but what you saw on television did not match what happened in real life. The raid was done in the morning, and everyone thinks it was done at night with the lights and the siren. No, it was all done earlier. And the FBI and the Department of Justice didn't put any of that information out. They kept it all hidden. They kept it secret. And it didn't become public until Donald Trump. It was Donald Trump was the one who put out that Mar-a-Lago was being raided. And then it took the Biden White House and the Biden DOJ 3 days to acknowledge it. Do you remember? Right after the raid, they were like, oh, the White House, the Biden White House goes, oh, Mar-a-Lago got raided? We had no idea. That's news to us. That's so weird. We don't know how it got raided. Do you remember that? And then
I do. It was awkward. It was like as if they didn't know what the right hand was doing when
that's
they
exactly
did
right.
Purposely. Yeah.
Because they weren't prepared for it to become public. The only reason the raid became public was because of Donald Trump. And I think they were trying to keep it until they figured out what kind of case they had. They thought if we can just get into Mar-a-Lago and raid the place, then we'll find the crime and then we'll promote it later, right? Well, once we have our ducks in a row, then we'll put it out. But Donald Trump beat them to it, and they had to come up with an answer that they didn't have one. And ultimately, they never had one, and so they had to bring the case to Florida. But yeah, no, I don't think people realize they tried to hide it.
Well, I don't know if you knew, in the middle of the lawfare, all those 4 years, were you a part of the president's legal team in between his 2 terms?
I started working for him in 2022. I volunteered for Rudy Giuliani in 2020. So I was working with Rudy in 2020 on the litigation, the post-election litigation. So I was very involved in that, which ended up getting me roped into the other Jack Smith case. As well as before the January 6th committee, and as well as with Dominion and all of the election cases. But I didn't actually work for the president until 2022.
Well, I don't know when this was. Actually, I probably could look back, and you might know better. But one of the times when President Trump was, between terms, coming back on Trump Force One from one of his appearances in New York, coming back to Florida. He reached out to some folks and said, I need some prayer. And we're a part of a team of people that help provide that with, some others that you're probably very familiar with. And so we put together a prayer call, and he was going to work through a regular operator like they do every time. Well, when it came time to go live, the operator left her post purposely. She was not there for 10 minutes. She was there at the beginning to kind of do sound checks. And then when it came time to do live, she just left her post. So he was, ready to go. And luckily we had a line into him. And so we were able to then still go live.
Wow.
We had over 160,000 people praying for him. And, in the middle of the lawfare days, for one of these times when he appeared with Jack Smith and all of that going on. But all that to say is there were a lot of people praying, even among the, dirty tricks and the things that were happening. How did you have an inside seat to some of the spiritual warfare that was going on? You're a Christian. You see it not only as a lawyer, but you're also aware that there's a spiritual thing happening. How was that as, kind of a front row seat? And did you feel the prayer?
Did I what?
Did you all feel the prayer for
sure
happening during all of this?
Yeah, I think, you would have to be blind as a bat to not see it. I think the work that you guys have done and many ministries across the country have done is invaluable. Look, the fact that President Trump is still alive, I think is a testament to the fact that people have been praying for him. So thank you for that. I'm not trying to sound facetious. I mean it sincerely, that I think you would have to be blind to not recognize that this is a battle between good and evil. And even Joe Biden says it. It's a battle for the soul of America. That was actually his quote.
Little did he know which side of the soul or maybe he
Oh,
does.
he might know.
He might
I
know.
think
Yeah, that much he might grasp.
he might
But
actually know. So yes, I mean, I think it was about, I think we're still in it. We're very much still in it. And quite honestly, I don't even think we're close to being through it. I mean, and I don't mean time-wise. I just mean success-wise, if I can say it that way. I think getting Donald Trump back in office was incredibly significant. I think if he had not won the election, I think America would be in a lot of trouble. We're still in trouble for a variety of reasons, but he was essential to having the chance to save this nation from the crazy woke agenda. So I think it was essential that he won. I think a lot of that comes from prayer. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all just so important. So thank you guys for the work that you've done, and I hope you see it. I hope you recognize, you know, we prayed that, we knew that, you know, we knew we needed to pray that.
Yeah. Well, you know, more for, you know, those of you who are in the midst of it, you know, I would imagine that, you know, you're seeing things you probably never thought you would see or experience. I mean, you probably, I mean, you know, we all know that it's deep and dark, but, you know, you've got a front row ticket here to some of the worst things that are happening in our nation's government. What was the most surprising thing to you?
I got indicted. I mean, I'm a criminal defendant. What on earth did I do? I didn't do anything. And the fact that they are charging innocent people with a crime for a political talking point is disgusting. And I'm fortunate that I mean, the reason I was indicted was because I was close to the president, but I'm also fortunate that I was close to the president because so many of these electors that they just happen to be the Trump electors from 2020 that have all been indicted. I mean, I've got friends that have lost their homes, that their families have fallen apart because the stress is too much. And they're using us to try to scare people out of participating in the political process. And it's really devastating what they're doing. I'm fortunate in the sense that I had a little bit of a platform. I was a little bit public out there, so people kind of knew what I was dealing with, or, you know, there were some that had the opportunity to know that. And so people stepped forward to help me. But there are many that didn't have that or don't have that now and are fighting for their lives. So, no, what our government has done to their own people is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. It needs to be cleaned out. And I believe in mercy. I absolutely believe in mercy. I believe mercy, you know, America needs mercy, but you can't put mercy before justice or you'll never have justice. You have to have justice first. And I think that's what we need right now. Our nation needs justice.
Are you encouraged to see some of the things happening? I think most of us wish it would happen faster, because we just know that there's a time ticking. And we know, you know, you probably even know more than us, you know, how deep and wide some of it goes because you've seen firsthand. But, you know, are you feeling like things are going in the right direction? Are you hopeful?
I am hopeful. I think you're right to go, you know, why hasn't this happened faster? I feel the same way. You know, President Trump put a post out earlier this week, basically saying the same thing, like, where are the indictments? And so I think, yes, I think the Department of Justice is doing what they can. They have their own battles to fight internally with the Department of Justice. So, you know, that makes it harder. But I think things are going well, but we need to see some indictments soon if we actually want people brought to justice.
So as you look ahead, what are some of the biggest challenges, being, you know, that you've been in the thick of things? What are some of the biggest challenges you think we face in that whole area of weaponizing and, you know, what you've experienced? What are some of the biggest challenges?
I think the first thing is exposure. I think the public has a hard time believing how bad it is because they think, oh, it's just political rhetoric. Oh, it's just people mudslinging. And no. There's and it's not just one-sided. It's not only Democrats. It's a majority Democrats, but Republicans are very much involved in this as well. And I think there needs to be a very significant exposure to the point where people get it. And it's not just political rhetoric, but it's exposed to the point where people understand how the government hasn't just been weaponized against Donald Trump. It's been weaponized against us, against the American people, against our way of life. I think a lot of Americans see it, and I think a lot of Americans don't. So I know Tulsi Gabbard's team has done some great work exposing some of that, but I think there needs to be a couple bombshells of significant revelation before Americans really grasp what's going on. And
are you aware of some of the bombshells that need to be dropped?
Well, I'm aware. I mean, I don't have files myself. I don't have email folders or whatever. But just having been inside, I see how it's working, and I know what we need to find. And we need to find it, or this administration needs to find it. So I think there needs to be some exposure before people really grasp it. And then on the backside of that, once there is that exposure, there need to be indictments.
So I know that you attended Charlie Kirk's memorial. We're fresh off of that.
I didn't, actually. I saw it, but I wasn't in Arizona. No.
Well, so you saw it. I watched it from my home as well. I was coming from another conference. I couldn't quite make it, but seeing that as a believer, did you feel a shift like a lot of people felt? And are you hopeful that, being a spiritual person, that we might see some wind in the sails spiritually that might help with some of the actual mechanics of some of this happen?
Yeah, I think it's very significant. I mean, it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic and horrific. It's also incredibly humbling and moving to see the response. And I think the manner in which he was taken was so appalling and egregious that I think it shook a lot of people. And so I hope that it inspires the next generation. Clearly, with the amount of people and the response that we've seen, it is inspiring people. So I think that's really good.
It underscores what you're saying about the, atmosphere that we're in, and the danger that we have in this nation, where there's so much. It's more than just rhetoric.
Yeah, I think that's right. It is more than rhetoric, and the violence is really only going one way. We see all of these transgender shootings. We see all of this violence, and it's all taken out on Christians praying at church, or kids in schools by transgender shooters. I think the vast majority of the recent shootings have been transgender shooters.
And they keep finding out more that they didn't know were, and then it's revealed that somebody else. So even more than we originally thought. Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that this continues to wake people up. I'm very hopeful and pray that we don't need another tragedy like this before more people realize what's going on. But I think it's really hard for a lot of people, particularly on the left, particularly influential people on the left, who I think genuinely believed their positions. I think they genuinely, for decades, the left has been advertising or marketing themselves as morally superior. They have a better moral compass. They're the empathetic party. They're the party of love. Hate has no place here. All of that. And I think people genuinely believed that that's how they were. And anytime you think you're better than someone just because of what you believe, I think that's a very dangerous place to be. And we're seeing that danger play out right now. I don't think conservatives, at least not in this generation, or at least, the last 40 years, whatever, I don't think conservatives have thought that they're better. At least that hasn't been what's been marketed, I definitely think conservatives think they're right. They're more correct, but I don't think, as far as morals go or worth or value
Mhm.
goes. I don't think you'd say you're better than Democrats.
Mhm.
But that's really what was marketed to Democrats, and they believe it. And in a weird way, I feel bad for them, because that's a real hard conclusion to come to, that,
Yeah.
oh, I thought I was this great person just because of what I believe. Turns out what I believe is so evil. It's killing people.
Yeah.
It's easier to believe, like, oh, that was just a one-off. That wasn't real.
Right. Yeah.
No, I
Well,
think that's a hard truth for them to swallow.
yeah, agree. And so switching gears a little, I'm curious. I've not met the president. My husband, Dave, has been with him multiple times, but I'd like to know what your impression is of President Trump from behind the scenes. We see the president as the president. A lot of people say he's the same when he's at the podium as he is in person. Tell me, how would you describe him in a few words, and what are your impressions of him?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, what you see is what you get. He is incredibly authentic publicly.
Mhm.
I think he is a bit of a showman too. Publicly he does his display, which is great. Crowds love it. But
Yeah.
he's incredibly funny, and I think he trolls people. He's very good at kind of trolling people.
Mhm.
I think people would be, and I don't think he looks mean or anything publicly. I think anybody who thinks that is ridiculous. But I think people would be surprised to know how kind he is in person.
Mhm.
He is so kind and very gracious to you, and sensitive to your needs and what you need. He is not an elitist at all, which is crazy, because if anybody were going to be one, he could do it,
Yeah.
but he's not.
Yeah.
He's very, very kind.
Mhm. Well, is there anything else that you want to say about your book that might give people a little taste, that would be give people the flavor of what they might experience if they get your book?
Yeah, so it'll give you all the behind the scenes of everything that happened with the Mar-a-Lago case, with the Jack Smith investigations, as well as my criminal case and a lot of the other cases that Americans have been ensnared with. The Mar-a-Lago case, I think, is the most interesting, because it's got the classified component, and it's got Mar-a-Lago, and it has all the fun, sensational thing, and I give it all to you. But it's really important to me that people understand how much they're coming after us too. And I don't think Americans realize how close we all are to being criminals just because of what we believe. And so I hope that people get a taste of that as well.
I think it's important for us to know the full, the truth, not only for ourselves, because most of us probably have a hunch, or we probably, have the gist of, but to have the facts, because we all have those liberal friends, right? And they like to kind of, put some things out there, and to be able to have some real information that can be shared, or at least to validate what you thought probably was the case, that this was, total weaponization, and probably be surprised at even how much more so. But we do have a little thing that we want to put up for your book, so people can find where to get it, Mr. Producer. It's called Defiant: Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. This is where you can get your copy at Amazon, but I know it is available other places. But get your copy. I think this is what a timely read. Not very often do we get to read about something that is like just so newly in the rearview mirror, and you just are fresh in being able to share these things. So well done on that. And one of the things we always ask all of our guests, whether they're elected officials or policy people, is how can we be praying for what you wrote about, and how can we be praying for you personally, Christina?
Thank you. I would ask for wisdom. I would want wisdom in my work and projects I've got coming up that I know could be significant. So I would just want wisdom with everything that I'm doing.
And for everything that you see, what would be a prayer request that you would offer for the nation, just from your perspective with the information and the experience you've had?
I would say exposure. As a nation, good or bad, Republican or Democrat, regardless of party. I think we need to peel back the curtain and just really see the truth of what's going on in our government. So my prayer for America would be exposure so that we can clean it out. If you don't see what's going on, you can't clean it out. So yeah, that would be my prayer for our country.
Well, could I pray over you now?
Yes, please.
All right. So, Father God, we just thank you so much for Christina. Lord, I just am amazed at her history of just how you formed, all of her experience. And then it's like it comes to bear at this moment when she served the president and had such a compass for truth, Lord, and for justice. And Lord, I just thank you for her story. We need more people who are willing to tell the truth on things, to be able to expose the lies that the enemy wants to share out there. And when I say the enemy, I'm not talking about our people enemies. I'm talking about the enemy of our souls. But Father, I pray that, as Christina said, we would see mass exposure in this nation for the things that have been happening that are harmful to our nation, that are untruthful, that are just evil, things that are anti-American, things that are harming everyday average citizens. And Lord, I want to go one step further. I want to pray not only for the exposure, but Lord, I want to pray for justice for those things. Because it seems like in a lot of ways, we know some things that have happened, but most of us are waiting for justice to happen. There have been a lot of things that have been made public. But Lord, as our discussion led us to, looking at the Justice Department, Lord, I pray that you unentangle them from whatever it is that's happening behind the scenes there, that the things they may have internal struggles or hurdles that they have, Lord, I pray that you would just free them to bring forth cases and indictments and bring the justice on all these things that they already know have happened. Lord, that they would bring justice. So, and I pray, as Christina directed, that we would have even more exposure. There is so much more, Lord, that I'm sure that, many of us don't even know. And how many other people like Christina have had a front row seat to many of these other things that have happened that need to be brought out into the light. So, Lord, I pray for that. And Father, I pray for Christina. Lord, I pray that you would give her wisdom beyond her years. Lord, I pray that you would give her all that she needs for this next phase, what you are bringing her into, Lord, whatever project or involvement she might have, Lord, she's been in your hands, Lord. And I know that as a believer, she's also seeking your wisdom, not just the wisdom of what we need in regular life. But Father, I pray that that your Holy Spirit would whisper to her the direction. I pray that you would give her favor. I pray you would continue to give her a platform, Lord. And Father, I just pray that you would bless her with this book, Lord, that she would have some sense of vindication of being able to share the truth about what happened. And Lord, I pray that it would be wildly successful and that a lot of people would hear what really happened. Lord, we thank you for her willingness to be used by you. And we just pray blessing upon blessing as she goes on to the next thing that you have for her. It's in your mighty name that we pray, Father. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your prayers.
Oh, well, Christina, we just appreciate you coming on and sharing some of these things. And I know that I've got my book, but I know others are going to be ordering their books and just poring over it, because the more that we all know the truth, the less the left is going to be able to continue to lie about some of these same things. So thank you for being bold, for being courageous, and for using your platform to shine a light on these things.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. God bless. Thanks.
You as well.
Well, one of the best things that happens at IFA is that we have the opportunity to hear from people like Christina, others that are in elected office, or others that are in policy world, or like Christina have had a front row seat to see some just ridiculous evil happening. And so your prayer for those people is so critical. And we may not always see the answers to our prayer, because intercession is not for us to be receiving the blessing or the benefit of the answers. But sometimes we do get to know that people feel the prayer that we are praying. And I want to just encourage you that when we go to events, I hear so often, thank you for praying. I can feel it. Or I knew that there were people praying, and thank you. So I want to pass on to you the thanks that we get when we go to policy, events and things that happen through the government, and people pass on their thanks. It's not Dave or I or even our team at IFA. It's you that is out there praying in your prayer closets. It's the million of you out there praying for our nation. And I just want to say thank you. So keep praying for Christina and her book. Don't forget to get a copy. I think we'll put that up again, and her website as well, which I think is ChristinaBobb.com. You can find out what the latest is, what she's up to, get your copy, and keep praying for her as you're reading that book or seeing her in the news. That's your reminder to be praying for those frontline people that are the tip of the spear. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We have so many big things happening coming up. We hope you join us. We've got an event happening on Capitol Hill that's going to be fabulous, October 28th through the 30th. One day we're going to be on the House side. One day we're going to be on the Senate side, meeting with elected officials, praying over many of them who are believers, but also hearing from policy experts who are sharing inside prayer points and giving us inside information, not like stuff we can't know, that we're not allowed to know, but from the front lines, giving us the intel that we need to pray with insight. We call it intercessory intel. And so you're going to have an opportunity to do that on Capitol Hill, as well as gather in person with other intercessors. And we all know that meeting in person is so much more fun and rewarding than meeting virtually. So thank you so much for being a part of the IFA family. We appreciate you, and we know that you are the I in IFA, and we know that what you do makes a difference. Thanks so much. God bless. We'll see you next week. Let's go ahead and all pray on our way out.
All participants are unmuted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for
Every
your
time we
grace
meet,
and
we
your
feel that
mercy,
we've heard you.
Thank you for your shed
You are
blood,
telling us
oh
how to
God.
pray
Thank
and where
you
we should go. Thank you for that direction. We are blind most of the time when we